Tuesday, January 17th, Plainfield Plan Commission is called to order. All rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Sagerbrook.
Here.
Commissioner Renzi.
Here.
Commissioner Menace.
Here.
Commissioner Heinen. Commissioner Womack.
Here.
Commissioner Green.
Here.
Chairman Kiefer.
Present.
Park District. School District. Fire District. Library District.
Thank you. In your packets, you have the minutes. We've got a couple kind of housekeeping matters. The first one is we need to approve the minutes for the December 20th, 2016 Plan Commission. Are there any changes or amendments to the December 20th minutes? It was pretty straightforward. We continued that case. The other item in your packet is the minutes for the January 3rd, 2017 Plan Commission. Again, any changes, updates, or amendments to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll accept both sets of amendments as they read. At this time, we have some time set aside for any public comments for anything that is not on our agenda this evening. So anything not on our agenda that someone would like to comment on, this would be the time to do it. Okay, seeing no reaction, we will move on. Do we have a development report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The village board did meet last Monday and took action on a number of cases that have been before the Plan Commission, as well as one item of interest. And that item is the village board approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Pace Suburban Bus Company for the design and potentially construction of a park and ride lot on the village-owned property north of Lockport Street and east of Wood Farm Road and Van Dyke Road. So in staff's opinion, that's an exciting development, and that would have the potential of coming before the Plan Commission for potentially a variety of entitlements, including a subdivision and rezoning and site plan review. So as that project moves forward, it may come before the Plan Commission as a formal entitlement application. In addition, the board approved an ordinance for the rezoning of the Blue House that is on Dillman Street near Route 30, Joliet Road. That's the house that is going to be potentially converted to a business transition commercial. So the ordinance approved the business transition zoning for those parcels. Board also approved an ordinance supporting the variance for the side yard encroachment that was related to a pool, deck, and retaining wall, and also directed for ordinance approval for a corner side yard fence variance. And then, let's see, took action on two other directing ordinance preparation for special use approval for a salon on Route 59 north of 127th Street, and for the planned development of a 2-unit residential use of the structure on Main Street just east of Route 59. So that concludes the development report.
Okay, thank you. In your packets, we have one case under old business. This is case number 1743-111016.SU/SPR. This is for the Primrose School of Plainfield. Do we have an updated planner's report regarding this case?
Yes, we do. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The applicant previously sought approval on December 6th before the Plan Commission for a special use permit for a preschool and childcare facility in the B3 zoning district, as well as site plan review of their development, Primrose School of Plainfield. When that case previously came before the Plan Commission, I believe the Plan Commission did not have any objections, with the exception that they shared the concern of staff, as well as the village engineer and the fire protection district regarding the location of the main access driveway on 135th Street. So the applicant went back and revised their plan to line up their main access drive with that of the fire protection district to allow safe and adequate left turn access into both developments off 135th Street. To highlight some of the changes that that the applicant made, the staff finds that the required findings of fact for a special use permit can still be made. The plan does not really change anything at all in that regard. If anything, it actually strengthens the applicant's case in that regard as far as their case for a special use permit, and staff believes that the required findings of fact can be made. In regards to the site plan review, the applicant revised their plan to now have the main driveway to access the developer's parking lot, that goes between the parking lot and 135th Street, now snakes around the north side of the building to meet the existing fire district main access point on 135th Street. And staff has consulted with the village engineer and fire protection district, and all are supportive of this plan and finds no objection with the revised plan. In regards to parking, there was only some slight modifications that needed to be made. They were able to add a new row of parking along the north side of the development. At the same time, there was a loss of some parking in front of the building on the west elevation of the building, but it resulted in a net gain of 3 parking spaces. While 49 spaces is still below the requirement, the developer has indicated that approximately 25% of families typically have a second child enrolled, reducing the number of families to approximately 135 at capacity. So from a number of licensed families perspective, the development does meet the requirement when looking at it that way. And the applicant has indicated that a 49 stall parking lot actually exceeds the 42 to 46 spaces that they typically find adequate for other facilities of a similar size, license capacity, and location, and is requesting relief from the parking requirements. There were no changes made to the building, the elevations, architecture, that will all remain the same. The revised plans are still in compliance with the zoning ordinance. In regards to landscaping, with the revised plan, the applicant was able to actually increase the number of landscaping on the property, including now a total of 30 trees from 10 different species, 449 shrubs from 8 different species, and 428 perennials and ground cover from 3 different species. And in revising their plans, the applicant was able to increase the number of plantings in all of the categories from what was originally planned. In regards to the lighting and photometric plan, the applicant did revise their photometric plan in connection with the site plan revisions, but there were no overall changes that increased light spill beyond what is allowed, other than that spot at the northwest corner of the property that they had previously had in their original plans, and which remains unchanged from before. That was for a light fixture that will actually benefit the Napa property to the west, in addition to the applicant's property. The location and the design of the trash enclosure remains the same, and the applicant's plans for fencing remain the same as well. In revising their plan, now that the main access drive is on the north side of the building, the applicant did have to shift their playground equipment to the further to the east of the building. But staff finds no issue with this, and it is still a great distance, I believe, of 2,000 feet away from the nearest residences, and staff finds no issue with this. And the applicant did allow adequate space on the eastern third of the property for open space and retention and stormwater and things like that, and it appears that there's still adequate space for that as well. So In conclusion, staff believes that the findings of fact can be readily be made to support a recommendation for approval of the special use for the preschool childcare facility in the B3 district. Staff also submits that the site plan is mostly in compliance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance and that the applicant has provided adequate justification for relief from certain requirements, including parking, foundation, landscaping, and fencing. The applicant has also demonstrated cooperation in revising their site plan to match their main access driveway on 135th Street with the fire district's main driveway across the street to allow safe and adequate dedicated left turn access into both developments. In doing so, the applicant was also able to increase the number of parking spaces and landscape plantings from what was originally planned. Overall, staff believes the development will be of benefit to the surrounding area and the community as a whole. And based on the foregoing, prior to discussion by the Plan Commission, staff is seeking a favorable recommendation. Should the Plan Commission concur, the following motions are offered for your consideration as mentioned in the staff report. And that concludes the staff report for the Primrose School, Plainfield.
Thanks. In regards to if a motion's made, does there need to be reference to the amendment to the PUD for the fence? Is that something you need to include in the motion, or are you just going to include that with the recommendation?
I think the original plan was just allow that as part of the site plan review.
Okay. Is there anyone here representing the applicant this evening? Get you approach the microphone. And I believe I'd swore you in at the December meeting. Did I
Yes, you
already swear
did.
So
Yep.
you remain. Just
I've
wanna remind you
remained
to
sworn in,
under oath.
yes.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the staff report in regards to this?
No, I think Andrew's got us covered. Did a great job presenting, and I think our new site plan meets with the concerns that we had at the last meeting, and I'm here to answer any questions that the plan commissioners may have.
Okay, thank you. If I could get you to remain there, just in case we have
Certainly.
any questions for you. At this time, is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question or a comment on this case? Okay, hearing none, I'll open this up to the commissioners. I just remind you, and for any of the commissioners that might not have been in attendance when we first heard this case, there was general support for the special use on the site plan. The biggest concern was really access to 135th Street and how it matched up with the fire protection district across the way there. And I believe it looks like it was addressed, but I will open up questioning to commissioners if anybody wants to comment on this case.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
In landscaping, this goes to staff. You said that the landscaping plan, though, does not meet the requirements for foundation landscaping. I understand the total plantings do, but do we need a stipulation waiving those foundation requirements? Because as the thing is laid out by the village, there should be a number of foundation plantings, and so we're not meeting that requirement. So wouldn't we need a waiver through some sort of something included in any resolution?
It's been my approach, and I'm certainly welcome kind of the direction from the commission on what you're most comfortable with, but especially when non-conformities or non-compliance aspects are identified in the staff report, provided the commission is comfortable with those and an alternative, that staff feels that approval of the site plan, or excuse me, a recommendation of approval for the site plan kind of covers those items or touches on those items. So for example, and it's probably a more specific issue, is the required parking. Staff operates with the understanding that the parking ratios as required in the zoning code are kind of more an art than a science. They aren't precise. And as long as the owner and operator is comfortable with the parking that would be provided, the Plan Commission and ultimately the village board in taking action on a site plan review, that type of situation wouldn't require a specific variance application as well. We're here in a public setting. We're covering the findings of fact, and if the commission's comfortable, it's been staff's approach that
Well, I can
speaks to it.
see that in that the staff report goes on in its conclusion to say the site plan is mostly in compliance. So I think that covers the Napa lighting fixture, which doesn't really, but we would want that to be a little bit brighter because of the interconnectivity, so that makes sense. and so is the foundation planting. However, the parking, I don't believe the statute or ordinance talks about using a licensed facility approach or licensed family approach. It talks about raw numbers. So if we're not in compliance with the parking, I understand what the applicant said and what the report says. I get that. My question goes to then, wouldn't we have to make a specific finding that the 49, through the representations of the petitioner, the ordinance is not applied here, and that a waiver is given to 42 subsequent to our, to staff revisiting it in a year, say, or something like that? Because there's reference, again, I don't know how, as an aside, you're gonna have east parking because you have the driveway which goes to the west, and then you have playgrounds on the east and more parking past the playground, so I'm not sure how that's going to be done. But I understand what the applicant's saying about the 42 number and 49, so in his mind, he's overbuilt. But we are charged with enforcing ordinances, and the ordinance does not have a licensed family approach that I'm aware of. So wouldn't we have to then, in that one particular place, do a waiver, but also have something with teeth for it? Because what happens if it turns out we need 48 to 49, like the ordinance says? What in this process gets them to put it in? Because the place is already built, it's already up and running, they have all the certificates, they have the operation going, and then we say, oh no, you need to add 5 additional spaces.
It would be difficult to retrofit it then.
Yeah,
I thought we touched on this last time we heard the case too, and I thought the, I guess, answer was, or what's been done in the past, is that the relief from the parking would go down with the approval, and if that ever became an issue, that could still be retroactively, I guess, burdened upon them. And maybe I understood that incorrectly last time, but I thought that was
I
discussed,
mean, it
right?
did come up in discussion, but,
but how, I guess the
Yeah, what's the
question
actual-
is how?
Yeah. Did they
How
give
is
them a
that gonna be done? I understand
non-compliance?
philosophically it can be done, just as I understand the representations about multiple children and different drop-off times. So their position is, well, we really don't need all that parking. Well, I didn't sit on the committee that drafted up the parking, but I'm figuring they probably had long discussions about various groups and various types of buildings, and they came up with a, not at midair, they had a long thought process, and their thought process says 49. And if we're gonna give 42, or 43, whatever, or I'm sorry, we're gonna give 49 instead of 61. Wouldn't there have to be, one, a waiver, and that we took the petitioner and we used the licensed family approach to pass it, and then we said, but if it doesn't apply, and then comes the teeth of,
I
I don't
think
know,
sta-
approval's
sta-
vacated, they have to come back or something.
Staff would offer that the commission has a few alternatives. One would be to recommend approval as presented, that, staff is comfortable, the petitioner is comfortable. If the commission were comfortable, the commission could recommend approval as presented.
Well, I
if there's
understand
a-
that, and I don't want anybody to think I'm not comfortable with
I'm
it.
just outlining
But
a few different
I'm also
alternatives.
charged with enforcing the ordinances as enacted by the village, and that says 61.
If the commission feels that it's appropriate, there could be a stipulation to provide the additional parking as presented and as required in the zoning code. Or if there's a concern, then the commission could choose not to advance a recommendation for approval. Again, staff's approach would be that a recommendation for approval with this full discussion as reflected in the minutes and in the staff report acknowledges the commission's level of comfort with respect to the licensed family approach versus the standard parking ratio from the zoning code.
I don't want them to spend money they don't have to and figure out a place to put the 12 extra spaces. But if they need the extra spaces, I'm thinking we should have a procedure in place where we can make the independent determination, because nothing against the applicant, but if we ask the applicant next year, I would be shocked for them to say, yeah, we missed it by 10. They're not going to say that because they're not going to want to spend the money. They're going to try to figure out some other way to do it. Okay, but is that what we want? Because that's basically what we're doing. If we go with the licensed family approach and approve this without any review or without any teeth in a review of this thing a year later, we might as well say, okay, we don't care what the ordinance says, we're going to approve 42, and maybe we'll have a stipulation, maybe we won't, but it doesn't really matter, because if there's no review subsequently and nothing with teeth for the village board to say to the applicant, no, you need to comply.
Okay,
think
so
it-
we have a
well-
couple of, I guess, options in regards to this. I'd like to get some feedback from some of the other commissioners. I think Commissioner Renzi's point is made.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that, I think the reality of this is, I think the world is overparked, and to have this many parking spaces, I forget the total number. I mean,
It's 61 by our calculations and 49 by theirs,
okay.
so it's 12 short.
Well, I mean, the reality is I'm assuming that you feel comfortable with the amount of parking that's out there right now, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got about 340 schools. We average 42 to 46. I'd say we probably got 10 of them where we were required to go to a level of like 60, and it's just extra asphalt.
Yeah, and that's the reality of this world is we get so concerned about parking, but the reality is all we're doing is adding impervious area and creating more stormwater runoff for our rivers and all that. So I think this is appropriate.
Well, and hang on, and then staff's opinion is that due to the nature of the business, the calculation they're coming up with, it's adequate in this particular instance. So what we need to decide as a commission is, if we're comfortable with that, how do we want, if we decide to make a motion regarding this favorably, how do we want to include that language? That's really what we're talking about. I'm going to go back around, and the other issue is, do we disagree with the calculation? And that may need some attention as well.
Well, the thing I was going to offer is a lot of times what's done in this scenario, and I don't, has your engineer actually just gone ahead and done I believe you have enough land there to put the rest of the spaces in. Has he done a graphic layout of it?
Yeah.
I don't think it was included in our packet,
No.
but I'm guessing
No,
you
but
could
that's
get,
why that
I'm
is
guessing
set
you
to
could
the
get
east.
it to us
We
pretty
can make it
quickly,
fit.
or
It's
get it
it's
to
a rare
staff.
instance where if I
Right.
had a stipulation that you rechecked it in a
Right.
year and said you need them, I've got space.
Right.
Well,
More often
and-
than not,
right.
I'm not in that position
Okay.
to add the stalls, but in this
I mean,
case, we are.
Normally,
We've
this
set
is
it
what
up
you call like
accordingly.
land banked parking. So in other words, you've already designed
Precisely.
it, you've planned for it, you've got a drawing that shows it. You're just not going to put it in right now, but it's committed. I mean, and it's really been designed. I mean, I can see you've got enough room for a single loaded stall, with about 12 spaces. I mean, you will have to add one more accessible space, so over by the building, so you're gonna, lose one there that you'll need to pick up. I'm guessing you're gonna bring the driveway down from your east-west drive. You're not gonna probably move your dumpster enclosure and loop it around that way, it'd be my guess. You would just do a second driveway off of the east-west access road and then single load it. That's, so, if your engineer's already laid it out, I think that is just get a graphic, representation of it and say that's land bank parking, it meets the 61, and, that way, I'm assuming if they needed to add the parking later at that point, they wouldn't even have to come back through us, because it's already been designed and we had seen it, or staff's seen it, and you're good with it. I mean, I don't know, how do you feel about that? I mean, land bank parking is pretty typical in development where,
I agree.
you lay it out, it's there, it's designed, it's planned for, but you just don't put it in.
Other commissioners in regards to this issue?
So what I was going to offer is, I guess, appreciation. thank you very much for listening to us. I think this plan is
Absolutely.
is a ton better than what you had before, just from, you know, an access and transportation perspective. Where you've got it connected across from the fire department is so much better than the original plan. And I apologize for I guess the original application, you know, showed that being, you know, the main access point. I think that was probably a dated document. So I applaud the efforts of the design team. I think they came up with a creative plan. I think this is a great plan, so I appreciate it. Just one technical question I have, and this is probably to staff. You know, you look at the Alta survey, you look at the site plan, there's an access easement, existing access easement along their west property line. You know, it doesn't really even cover, you know, where the connection is happening in the parking lot, and would we want to mandate an access easement over that main drive to allow access over to Napa? What's your thoughts on that?
Staff is comfortable with the plan as provided, and I don't know if that's
Well, I'm just
entirely
wondering
necessary.
from a legal standpoint.
I think this can often be, you know, worked out in the engineering review. So the engineering review is still
Okay.
being conducted, and I think they're supposed to wrap up within a week. And so I think any sort of technical issues like
if that
this
doesn't come
can
up
be
as a technical item,
Yeah.
I guess I would.
yeah. But I'll share that with our engineer.
Very good, thank you.
As a lawyer, I think everything should be reduced to writing.
So Jonathan, I had a question not about parking. So basically now, with the new location of the driveway, the fire department has no serious objections and they're okay with it. Is that the case?
That's correct. I defer.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I received an email from a representative with the Fire Protection District, and they are comfortable with the revised plan.
Okay, good.
And
Thanks.
that is always a standard stipulation we include in motions, so. But that was the big discussion last time.
Yep.
So I just want to, again, I want to compliment you on the changes. I mean, I think it's a much better plan. I mean, with the access drives lined up, the turn lanes on 135th work. You know, the thing about the foundation planning, I mean, when you look at your plan, I know you have a apron sidewalk around the building, and I think you would probably agree it's probably safer to keep the kids. You need to circulate them to the playground and everything. And sure, it'd be nice to have foundation plantings along the building, but that pushes the sidewalk out closer to the driveways and the pavement. And I'd rather keep the sidewalk back and keep the kids farther away from the pavements for safety. And I think with everything else you're doing on the site with the rest of the landscaping and the way you've wrapped the playground around the east end of the building, I mean, I think it's, so the only thing I would, like I said, I would like to see you get, if your engineer's done this layout, I would ask you to get it to staff before this goes to village board so they can see the land banked parking plan. And then I think it's planned for, and there's no question in anybody's mind that it's, you know, if it needs to be put in, it can be put in.
Sure. Can certainly do that. Yeah, we just need to revise it, because
Yeah.
when I did it, we didn't have the drive where
Right,
it is now.
right.
So I've got to tweak it just to
Right.
make them jive. But the overall parking lot didn't move, so it still fits in
Right.
that far western edge.
I would also like to applaud you for modifying the plan here. I think you guys did a very nice job addressing what we had as concerns last time. I think the drive entrance here benefits the site as well in that it's kind of a forced speed reduction for anyone pulling into the site. As you know, I had 2 children in daycare at the same time, and kids are always obviously moving through the parking lot and such, so I think that's a good thing. And with respect to the parking, you know, having had that experience, I don't disagree with your commentary about the multiple children per family and or various drop-off times. So I'm comfortable at the 49 spaces, but I don't disagree that if there's an approach to reassess it in the event that, you know, if there's any times when the daycare facility holds a special event and such that everyone is going to be flooding to the facility at the same time, that might be the only time you ever run into some kind of issues with the parking capacity.
But we do have, you know, a large Meyer parking lot near us that, you know, we don't really stand alone. We connect to them. You know, they certainly wouldn't want us using it daily for our staff or anything, but for, you know, a Saturday event or something, I would think they would work with us on that.
True. Thank you.
Thanks.
If there's no other comments, I would entertain a motion regarding the special use request.
I move we adopt the findings of fact of staff as the findings of fact of the Plan Commission, and furthermore, recommend approval of special use for a preschool childcare facility on Lot 2 of the Meyer Napa Plainfield re-subdivision.
Second?
A motion has been made and seconded regarding the special use request. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. So the motion for special use is approved by the Plan Commission. I would also entertain at this time a motion for the site plan review.
I move that we recommend approval of site plan review for the proposed Primrose School of Plainfield development on Lot 2 of the Meyer Napa Plainfield re-subdivision, subject to the following two stipulations: compliance with the requirements of the village engineer, and number 2, compliance with the requirements of the Plainfield Fire Protection District.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded regarding the site plan review. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Could I have a point of order first? Because the Commissioner Segbrook made the motion, but previously he talked about the submittal of a land banked parking. So you are making your motion with the understanding that that's going to be submitted, and that's
Yes.
why it wasn't then part of your motion?
Right. I mean,
Okay.
he said he would, and I believe they will before it
It's
goes to
part
the
of
village
the-
board.
Record of
Yeah.
Okay.
discussion, public record.
Okay, that's fine. I just needed that clarification.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded regarding the site plan review as presented. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. So the motion for the site plan review is approved. What will happen then is both of our recommendations will go forward to the village board. So please keep in contact with staff. They'll let you know when they're on the agenda. And again, thank you for coming back to us.
Thank you.
I also appreciate the changes you made in the application.
Glad it worked out well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes old business. Under new business, we have 3 cases this evening. The first one is case number 1748-1228-16SU/SPR, and it's for Station 1 Des Plaines Street LLC. It's a request for a special use, which includes a public hearing and also a site plan review. Do we have a planner's report for this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you noted, the special use request does require a public hearing, so staff would ask that the record reflect the appropriate notices have been published and posted in accordance with state statute and local ordinance. The case that's before the commission this evening is for redevelopment of the original Plainfield Fire Protection District headquarters and Station Number 1 in downtown Plainfield. Staff's very excited about the project. I know since the fire district built its new headquarters and training facility and a replacement Station Number 1 on 135th Street, which we just saw in proximity to the previous case here. This has been a great development opportunity in the downtown, and we really think that this has the potential to be an outstanding addition to the downtown. In terms of site context, to the north, we have a mixed-use building. The main floor is currently commercial. I believe it's a painting service contractor with apartments above. To the south, we have obviously the core of our downtown mixed-use, ground floor primarily retail, with second floor a variety of uses, some residential, some commercial or office use on the second floor, and the Masonic Lodge immediately to the south. To the west, we have restaurants, and as well commercial office. To the east, there's a garage and some parking directly to the east of the subject site. It is worth noting that the project includes an existing parking area with access from Oak Street, and also there's a dedicated alley that runs along the easterly project boundaries, but it excludes one parcel here. There is a home that between the alley and the Oak Street parking kind of wraps around, so there's one area with a little bit of a sensitive use adjacent to the subject project. The property currently includes the original fire station and headquarters building. There's an extensive area of parking, not just to the north of the building, but to the east, to the rear. And you can see to the left in this photo, there's what used to be an ambulance bay, I believe. And then the parking that I touched on, there's some parking that extends with access to Oak Street. There are two components of the request this evening. The first is for a special use for plan development, and that's primarily just to address the proposed redevelopment uses. It would include ground floor commercial space, what staff would hope and we believe would be suitable for, skipped over, restaurant use or uses. There are 2 bays there, approximately 6,500 square feet in total on the ground floor. And then the second floor is proposed to be 6 residential units. So the zoning code identifies residential would be permitted in the downtown B5 district via a special use. So staff has encouraged the applicant to proceed with the plan development, requesting approval of the ground floor commercial and the second floor residential. The project also includes the potential for a second phase building addition or a second building that would kind of mimic or mirror the original building in terms of the scale and as well the uses. It would provide for ground floor retail or commercial opportunities, and I believe 4 residential units proposed on the second floor for that potential future phase. And then the plan development has 2 minor aspects of relief or specific information sought. The first would be to allow for a monument sign that would be slightly in excess of the maximum size permitted in the central sign district. And then the second request is that the site plan approval and the special use approval for this second phase building addition would be allowed to vest and maintain in effect, that it would not expire after a 1-year period as the code is currently drafted. If a building permit were not issued within 1 year of the special use approval, then that special use approval would expire for the future phase. So the plan development just clarifies that this is a kind of a long-term plan, and the timing of that second phase construction is uncertain, or we're not able to predict at this time. So in terms of the findings of fact, there are 2 standard findings for all special uses, and then a handful of findings of fact that are specific to plan developments. Staff will provide just a very brief overview of those. The first general required finding is that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate area for purposes already permitted, nor would it substantially diminish property values. Staff believes that the requested plan development, the commercial uses on the ground floor and the residential uses on the second floor, will be compatible with adjacent uses and will result in no negative impacts that will be detrimental to adjacent properties. Again, with respect to the site context, there are already a number of examples of the mixed-use development that this redevelopment plan proposes, with ground floor residential and second floor commercial immediately to the north and south and present in the vicinity. So staff feels that the requested plan development would be entirely compatible with the adjacent properties. As noted in the site context, there is one home here on Oak Street, and in particular, with the potential for the second phase development, this area could experience increased traffic in and out, or at least out. Here, as you look at the second phase site plan, and I know we'll get to this later on in the report, there would be one-way ingress from Desplaines Street to provide access to this parking area, but the vehicular egress would be entirely via Oak Street. So that area would experience some additional activity, but staff believes with appropriate landscaping and buffering, potentially fencing and just sensitivity through the site planning process, that those potential negative impacts could be mitigated. The second general required finding of fact is that the establishment of the special use will not impede normal and orderly development and improvement of adjacent properties. The area is essentially built out, but staff believes that the proposed redevelopment of the fire station and the building addition would have no negative impact on development or use and enjoyment of adjacent properties for those uses that are currently permitted in the B5 zoning district. In terms of the specific findings of fact that are related to the plan development section of the code, the first is that the plan development fulfills the objectives of the comprehensive plan and the land use policies of the village, and presents an innovative and creative approach to the development of land in the living environments. Staff believes that redevelopment of the fire station will advance a number of objectives of the comprehensive plan. For example, the project will generate sales tax and property tax revenue, would provide opportunities for shopping and dining, would create job opportunities or employment, and provide additional housing options in the downtown, which are all factors that the comprehensive plan promotes. The second finding is that the proposed land uses would fulfill or be expected to fulfill a need or demand for such uses within the village. Staff supports and is actually enthusiastic about the potential for additional commercial opportunities, including the potential for restaurants or other commercial uses in the downtown. And separately, we also support the proposed additional residential options in the downtown area. The next finding is that the physical design efficiently utilizes land and adequately provides for public services. This is essentially a redevelopment of the existing property. It does have adequate access to the water and sewer utilities. It proposes, and we'll touch on this in the site plan section as well, proposes a reconfiguration of the driveway apron area to provide additional parking, on-street parking spaces, an expanded area for outdoor dining. So staff believes it's an efficient use of land and adequately provides for our transportation and public facilities. The next finding relates to bulk and density relief that's requested, and there's none requested here as part of the plan development, so this finding is not applicable. In terms of open space and recreation, the upwards of 10, potentially a maximum of 10 residential dwelling units would have a small incremental increase on the parking, or excuse me, the park obligation, or the open space obligation. Given that a park dedication would be, associated with that impact would be impractical, be very small. Staff would foresee that park impact would be met by payment of cash in lieu of a park land dedication at the time of building permit issuance, consistent with our standard practice for park and school obligations for projects of this magnitude. The next finding is that the plan development is compatible with the adjacent properties in the neighborhood. Once again, this is very much compatible and consistent with the trend of development in the area that we see to the north, to the west, and to the south. And the next two I think are somewhat in duplication. So just in summary, staff would submit that the project will not have detrimental impacts to surrounding properties, and that the proposed commercial uses would be a continuation of the existing commercial uses that are present, and likewise the upper floor residential is consistent and compatible with the residential opportunities that are currently found in the downtown area. So in summary, staff believes that the findings of fact can be demonstrated to support approval of the special use for plan development. That plan development being the approval of the ground floor commercial and up to 10 units of second floor residential with provisions for the monument sign and a continued vesting of the special use approval for the second phase. So that kind of covers or concludes the special use analysis. In terms of site plan review, there are really kind of two phases to look at. The first phase is essentially just redevelopment and reconstruction of the existing building. So what you see here, other than what's shaded in gray, we have redevelopment of the main building. The ambulance bay would be proposed for demolition. That would provide some additional room for parking. And you have the opportunity for reconfiguration of the parking and access out to Oak Street. As part of the site plan, there is a proposal right now. The driveway apron is essentially all open. There's no curbing, there's no on-street parking, obviously to allow for the ingress and egress of the emergency vehicles that, the former use of the building. The proposal would be to have this driveway apron area reconstructed, and it's not subject to this agreement per se, but it's actually contemplated that that work would be undertaken by the Village of Plainfield, or at least funded by the Village of Plainfield, to complete the reconfiguration. The additional sidewalk space would provide the applicants with opportunity for outdoor dining in a manner somewhat similar to what's found on Lockport Street. It would be a little bit more permanent in nature, with some fixed and retractable canopies that would really be an additional amenity for the existing building. So that kind of touches on the use and activities of the front driveway apron area. So the vast majority of analysis for the site plan review really isn't applicable because this is an existing building, but they're proposing to take out the overhead door bays and replace those with somewhat conventional storefront openings. Much of the windows, second floor windows, in the secondary elevations, the windows would be maintained as currently exist. In the elevations, as you see here, there would be an EFIS sign band constructed above the overhead bay area. And then on the lower portion of this, this shows the proposed second phase building addition. So this is the primary elevation that would face on Desplaines Street, so the west elevation. Then it gets a little bit confusing as you go around the various sides, but this would be the rear of the main building, as shown on the top. And then in terms of circulation, we touched on that with a two-way circulation available out to Desplaines Street in the first phase. Construction of the future addition would restrict that to a one-way condition in the second phase. With respect to required parking, the actual parking requirements would depend on the ultimate use of the building. So in the first phase, the 6 upper floor residential units would require 9 spaces. That much is known. If there were just a general retail or commercial use, that would require 20 spaces. That's 1 space for every 300 square feet of gross floor area. If it were a more intense restaurant use, it could require up to 47 parking spaces. Or excuse me, I'm getting my so up to 67 spaces if it were each bay, an intense sit-down restaurant use, for example. So that would be a total of 67 spaces in total. There are a number of spaces provided on site. We have the new parking spaces provided on street, on Desplaines Street, and as well the public parking lot on the west side of Desplaines Street can be counted towards that required parking. So there is sufficient on-street parking capacity per the parking study in the requirements of the zoning code. Once the second phase is constructed, there'd be 4 additional residential units that would require 6 parking spaces in total. And again, depending on the ground floor use, if that were an office, retail, or a restaurant, that the parking demands would vary somewhat. But staff believes that there's sufficient private parking as well as on-street and off-street public parking available to meet the required parking as outlined in the zoning code. In terms of the elevations and the proposed building materials, again, the existing buildings and window fenestration would remain. Staff has identified just a handful of considerations or recommendations. The applicant didn't really have the benefit to have any discussion. This report was prepared on late last week. Yesterday was a holiday, so staff certainly invites feedback and suggestions from the applicant and their team with respect to staff's considerations. One of those is to kind of play up the former use of the building as the fire station. For example, using a more ornamental or decorative style of overhead door storefront assembly in place of what's currently reflected on the elevations. Staff identified just a few examples, I believe in the report. I don't have them here in the PowerPoint, but there are a few photographs just to stimulate the discussion or as representative photos for discussion purposes at least. Another suggestion would be to provide either a projection of a balcony or some type of limited outdoor space for the upper floor residential units. That would give a little bit of facade depth. It would be an amenity for the second floor residential. So this could be proposed or contemplated, not just on the front elevation, but potentially in the rear for one or more of the residential units to the rear of the buildings as well. The majority of the windows are proposed to remain, so staff would welcome some consideration for either a new window with a little bit more residential character or some additional architectural interest, or if it's possible to enhance or upgrade the existing windows. For example, if there's an overhead door, decorative overhead door that has a wood material or an accent, if that can be incorporated in some of the window fenestration, perhaps that would be a way of dressing up the building a little bit and carrying out that building material throughout the building. And then final architectural recommendations, at least for consideration or for the applicant's feedback, would be to look, if I can find the right elevation here. So for the main elevations here on the south side of the existing building, maybe there's a way of opening up that south side with some additional windows just to provide a little bit more visibility for that ground floor space. So in terms of landscaping and lighting, as the site is essentially fully developed, there aren't extensive opportunities for landscaping, but staff would welcome the chance to look for opportunities to enhance, whether it's foundation landscaping or even portable, planters and such to provide some green space. And similarly, probably not extensive exterior lighting proposed, but if there is some lighting proposed, the opportunity to review a landscaping and lighting and photometric plan staff feels would be beneficial. So I think in summary or in conclusion regarding the site plan review, staff supports the proposed uses. Staff supports the concept of the building addition. Staff's comfortable with the proposed parking and believes that the vehicular circulation can work and is suitable. And staff has not identified any issues that would prevent us from seeking a favorable recommendation. So pending further input and discussion from the applicant and certainly direction from the Plan Commission, staff would be seeking favorable recommendations for both the special use for plan development and for the site plan review at this time. That concludes the staff report.
You made a reference in your staff report to a potential sign code variance. There's no reference to that in the report in regards to potential motions. Is that something you would want to see included in a motion potentially, or is that something that would come back before the Plan Commission at a later date?
I think the applicant has identified a size for that sign. We don't have the design per se, but the size, I think it's
Potential monument
6
sign?
feet,
Correct.
72 inches. Is that, I could pull that out as we talk here, but I think if the Board of Trustees supports this, ultimately there will be what's called a plan development agreement, basically a statement of intent and agreement where all these specific stipulations will be articulated, and we could have attachments, but there would be a specific provision that indicates the plan development includes approval of a monument sign of up to, and I can provide the dimensions as we talk here. Looks like Mr. Silverman. Thank you, sir. Beat me to the punch. So it'll be 96 inches, so that's what, 8 feet by 72, 8 feet by 6 feet. So it's a.
You are not at this time looking for a motion regarding that on our part.
That would be covered as part of the plan development, so we're identifying that the plan development would include approval of a sign of up to those dimensions.
At this time, is there anyone here representing the applicant? Can I get you to approach the microphone over there, please? And I will need to swear you in, so if you could raise your right hand. Is this gentleman also going to?
Yes, he may.
Let me swear both of you in at the
Okay.
same time then. So, do you swear that all testimony you may give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the recording secretary and then proceed with your testimony.
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Mark Siegel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission and staff. My name is David Silverman. I'm an attorney, and I'm here representing the LLC, the South Des Plaines Street LLC. Here with me tonight, besides Mr. Siegel, who is the architect with Genesis Architecture, is Robert Soho, Bill Pomerani, and Angelo Coloranimos, who are the owners of the building. They closed on it, I guess, a couple months ago, and kind of share the excitement that was put forth by your staff about the redevelopment of this building. We agree with the staff recommendation, or the staff report that was presented in the findings of fact. As pointed out, there were a couple other suggestions made. I guess what we'd like to see is the opportunity maybe to have this approved tonight, and if there are some accommodations that can be made, we can continue to work with staff on those issues. They don't appear to be major, and you know, we think it's a good plan. We think it's a good use, and whenever you're working with an old building, you know, there's certain limitations that apply in that building also. So we'd like to move forward tonight if we could.
Okay, thank you. If you could just remain there in case we do have some questions for you. Sure. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment or ask a question regarding this case? Get you to approach this microphone over here, please. And I will also have to swear you in. You could raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And can you state your name for the recording secretary, please?
My name's Earl Overman. My wife and I own a property that's adjacent to the project, and I had just received the registered mail last week, so I'm kind of new to this issue. 3 questions came up when he was going through all the descriptions. First of all, there was at least an implication that there was a little negative impact on the residences currently along the borders of this project. And I wondered where was that conclusion reached? How do you, is it subjective? Is there an objective study that was done that declared that there was no impact, negative impact on the residences you find on, I think it's Illinois Street, right?
That's correct. So that would be based on my analysis. So it's a subjective opinion based on my analysis. The conclusion is based on the fact that the uses that are proposed are identified as permitted uses in the zoning code. Commercial use or a restaurant is permitted. There are a number of restaurants or commercial uses present in the downtown area. Likewise, the second floor residential use that's requested is identified as a use that is allowed in the zoning code. It would require a special use review, and a public hearing such as we're having this evening would give the Plan Commission a chance to evaluate the potential impacts of the use in this specific location. So this meeting and certainly your participation is a component of that analysis.
Well, I'm sure most of the people, may I continue? I don't know how.
Yes, you may. And in fact, what you can do is if you dispute one of these findings or want to comment on it, you can do that specifically.
Okay. The zoning and the current existence of current use and so forth, would you agree that you're moving those things a little to the north? You know, these things are being moved off away from the main street and toward the north, which affects those people who have homes on Illinois Street. This is their backyard. And I don't really, I can't tell from what I have or what I've seen what phase 2 is going to look like. Is that a roof line that'll be the same as the existing roof line, or will it be a lower structure? I'm trying to determine how much of an impact that second development will be relative to what's there already. It's hard to tell.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and certainly we want this to maintain a conversational, so by no means do I want you to perceive this as a back and forth. I'm trying to contest. In fact, I value your questions and your input. So The first observation I think you made is that the requested uses at this location, they're not on Lockport Street, so as you come off of Lockport Street, there's the potential to impact people who aren't currently, and you can see in the aerial photo here, the properties on Illinois Street would back up to at least a portion of this. Again, staff's assessment is that the existing fire station building in particular is a large structure. It's oriented to the west towards Desplaines Street. So a lot of the activity, whether it's dining patrons, employees coming in and going, and that sort of thing, that activity would take place here on Desplaines Street, which is commercial in nature for the vast majority. There is one detached home on the west side of Desplaines, essentially at the termination of Oak Street. But for the most part, staff would not expect any sound or any dramatic impacts that would cause hardship for the properties on Desplaines Street. I could be wrong, but that's my thought process is that the
As you
current
described it, I was
orientation.
picturing the open-air restaurant, though, the outdoor serving and so forth, and I presumed that would be to the north instead of
It
to
would
the
be,
Desplaines
it would
Street
be to the west. So this is the existing fire station as it oriented to the west. These overhead doors, in their place, there would be the potential for canopies and outdoor dining as the seasonal weather permits. So that was your first question. The second question, if you could refresh my memory, I didn't want to overlook the first question. The second question
The
was,
second phase and
Oh,
the
what
size
the
of
building
the
looks like.
structure that's
Okay,
going to be in
yes,
the second phase.
we certainly
You
have
really
that
can't
information.
tell from what's there so far.
It's about 7 feet lower, the roof line.
So on this, if you can see here, this is the
That's the
existing.
structure right there where your arrow is right now. That's
Yeah, this is the existing stairwell, or in the vicinity of the existing stairwell here. I don't know if you can see that, where that cursor is moving.
Mhm.
And then this is where the addition would join the existing stairwell in this area. So this, and then in terms of what it would look like, this is what it would look like on the lower portion, the retail C and retail D. These would also face west onto Desplaines Street.
And that would also have occupancy above also.
There'd be four residential units proposed on the second floor, and then the ground floor would be the potential for additional retail, office, commercial uses. Could be a restaurant if there's demand.
The last question I have is the old alleyway, the old access. That completely surrounds a person's home. And actually, our garage accesses off of that alleyway. I'm curious, what is the thought process regarding that home that is actually literally in the middle of that access area there? What's the thought process there?
Yeah, if I could
What are you
defer to the
hoping to
applicant.
acquire that home and tear it down and make it all parking, or were you planning to build around it, or what was the plan for that?
The site plan is shown here. I'll defer to the applicant if they can address what the anticipated usage is. But the site plan does reflect reconfiguration of the parking. I know that the parking is currently on the westerly most side of the lot where there's a fence and it says authorized vehicles only and so forth. So I think this shows some reconfiguration and how the circulation would utilize the area to the west of the home versus the alley. I'll defer to the applicant if they're able to address.
Right, I think the question was, would that home be demolished or would something happen to it? We don't own the home, so that we would have no intention right now to acquire it, and obviously nor to demolish it.
And that the alleyway that's to the east of that home, or what used to be an alleyway, hasn't had a vehicle on it probably 15 or 20 years. But will that be an access point to this property?
I think the plan was, yes, it will be an access, and I think some of the neighbors out there use it for parking, if I'm not mistaken, at this point, and that may continue. We'll just have to see how that works out.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell from the map exactly what the plans are for that, and that's why I want to know how that's going. Right now, it's grass. It's just dirt and grass. It's not what it was. But again, our property has an access off that alley to our garage, and our neighbor has an access off that alley to his garage also. For what it's worth,
Okay, thank you.
it's going to matter. That's about it. I just want to make sure that the people living there understand exactly what's going on. Like I said, I just got a letter last week, so I'm new to this. But I think it would be prudent to make sure that we've done good communication with those people, because their backyards are now going to be facing a building with a lot of coming and going, if you will. Maybe there'll be a population increase of what, about 50, 60 people or so with parking, and obviously that alley access would be an issue too, but I don't see anybody else here that lives there that I know of, so it's just me.
Right. Mr. Chairman, if I may, certainly appreciate your questions. I feel they're on point. I have some business cards here. If you like one, if you'd like to take some for neighbors, you're welcome to share those.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And then just for the record, you said you're new to this process. What happens is this is a public hearing addressing just what's requested from the applicant. We as a commission will make a recommendation, possibly favorably, possibly not. Then it's just the first step. This would go on to the village board then, and again, there'd be another opportunity to comment, you know, if you or your neighbors were interested, but also the board would have to take final action on this. Okay.
And are all of these illustrations online?
Microphone, what's it? Will this should be part of it with the online packet is also available. So everything you're seeing this evening is available online from the village website. So people in the audience or watch from home can also access this information. Okay. Are there any other comments from the public in the audience this evening? Okay, hearing none, I will open up questioning to the commissioners. Commissioners, you're free to ask or comment on this case.
I'm just a little bit confused then about the alley that goes to the north. So, to staff, that is a village-owned alley?
It's currently publicly dedicated as alley. It's right of way, public right of way, but it's not improved. It's not used for any public purpose. So the folks who abut it, can make use of it for parking or their own personal access.
But the two garages, do they then exit and enter onto that alley?
I believe so. If I understood our public comments correctly, that's
okay.
Correct.
Then wouldn't the parking, moving the parking from the west to the east, affect all those landowners' ability to get into the garages?
It's actually not to the alley, but to the east of the existing parking area. So if you can follow my cursor, currently the parking is on the west side of this parking lot, and I think the site plan just shows it shifting slightly to the, so it doesn't jump to the east side of the home. It won't be over where this alley is.
Oh, okay.
And
So
the orientation changes a little bit when we go over here, but
basically there's then two alleyways.
correct.
One which won't be affected, which is the one that the individual was talking about, the access for his garage.
Correct.
And the second one is a little bit farther to the west, that they're then going to flip-flop the parking from the west to the east.
Right. It's actually, the western part is not an alley. It's a parking lot right now. It's just not highly utilized. It's been restricted for fire department and emergency use.
And that brings to the next question. For fire department, I would assume they don't have any problem with it, but with the alleyway only going one way out, the only way into the property would be through the dedicated alley off of Des Plaines then. Is that correct?
Well, if the fire department needs to get in, I think they'll go. They won't observe any one-way only signs, but certainly in more serious nature, staff would defer to the fire district to address any concerns.
And to the applicant then, the monument sign that you want, do you have any pictures of that, or do you have a design in mind?
Not at this time.
Okay, so you can't say whether it's going to be like a lettered sign or a LED sign or a combination?
Well, it's going to be in keeping with your downtown plan, I'm sure. My guess is that as as you do the new streetscape, we'll want to do something that, you know, is compatible and in keeping with the new streetscape down there.
And if I can just add briefly to that, at this point, the only relief that's being requested is for the size. So it is still in the central sign district that has its own limitations. Interior illumination would be prohibited. The sign is intended to be.
So the only thing we would do in the PUD then is say, okay, that whatever, 8 by 6 feet or 8 by 7 feet or whatever.
That's
and
correct.
and then they would have to comply with the rest of the downtown signage code.
That's correct.
And to the applicant, have you talked with the Park District about any contribution?
We have not. Your staff report identified there'd be a cash contribution, so, you know, obviously what your ordinance is, it is, and we'll abide by that. As staff pointed out, it's not practical to do any type of park here or anything, so it'll be whatever your ordinance requires.
And for landscaping then, do you have a plan yet or anything that as to whether you're going to do whatever in terms
Sure.
of plantings, whether they're going to be permanent or they're going to be
Yeah.
like in
There's not a lot of opportunity for a lot of landscaping on the site because of the parking, and obviously the parking's a premium in your downtown area. But I guess as I foresee it, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, out in front where you have the seating, I'm sure there'll be some sort of potted landscaping out in that area. Staff has suggested some possible landscaping to shield that house, so we'll work with them on that. I think there's a fence there now, if I'm not mistaken, so it might be, you know, in the nature of a fence or some type of landscaping to shield that.
because I think we have two things. One is the outside dining to the west, where if your idea is to basically go permanent or more permanent, like the Pancake House, where they have their permanent supports up, and then when the weather comes, they just put the roof out, but you could put the plantings around that. Or you could put, you know, just wheel it out and have like little baskets that go over it.
I think it's going to be pretty much market driven. We assume that it's going to be a restaurant site in there and in at least one of the units, and, you know, depending on the restaurant and depending upon their ownership, they may want to do different things. So we'll obviously be back to see your staff when that comes about, because there is an internal review process of the outdoor dining at that point, as I understand it.
Because basically, again, our approval or denial is really irrelevant. It's the final vote, and it's the only one that counts, is the trustees for the city, and one would hope that they could have some sort of landscaping, if not plan, some sort of idea as to, well, this is how it's going to look. Are we going to have bollards? Are we going to have just fences with materials thrown over them? Are we going to have permanent planters put in so that area can be staked out? You know, exactly, you know, what are, I understand that individual restaurants can have different things, but as to, you know, what we're going to do, it would be nice to have some idea, other than, I suppose you could always work with staff, but that's kind of vague, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of vague, but also too, remember that the village is going to be doing some streetscape improvements out there, which I assume will be consistent with the Lockport streetscape requirements. I don't know if there's any plans for trees in that area, if it's just sidewalks, you know, and it may sound kind of empty or hollow to say we're going to work with staff, but really the meetings that we have with staff are usually pretty productive, and they certainly are vocal and tell us what they're looking for. So we do have to come back for those outdoor dining improvements at this point, and it just makes more sense to design it when the market is ready and we know who's going to be there.
Okay, that's true. The only thing I would say is that you do have a bit of permanency in the placement of the doors, and I concur. I don't know what the other chairman, or the chairman and the other members of the planning committee see, but I think that, 'cause I've been in a number of places where they've kept the warehouse look or the garage motif, and it really looks pretty neat, and it looks unique. And then when the weather is nice, the doors can go up, and it basically can extend the entire restaurant, as opposed to just, closing it up and turning it into a regular building. I think there's an opportunity here to make it really pretty, I hate to use the word neat, but he's shaking his head, yeah, so. I
Cool,
guess-
cool
yeah,
would
there
be
you
the
go.
word, right?
I was thinking of something completely different.
But I'm just saying, so I think that the other stuff, if you can work with staff, I'm okay with that, because it's clear that this is a nice project, or at least to me it's clear, that everything. I do believe, though, that there needs to be a plan for the alleyway to the north, for the landscaping, and there needs to be some sort of a plan or procedure where the monument sign and the door space and the outdoor seating and all the landscaping, some conceptual plan about that, so they can at least decide whether they're, I wouldn't think for instance, we would want shade trees.
Right.
Okay? But I can see where a couple planters of perennials wouldn't quite do the trick either, because that's a pretty big area. So I would think that somewhere between there should be a meeting place.
Other commissioners?
So I think this is a great use for a reuse of this building. I completely support the commercial aspect from the first floor and or mixed use building, second floor residential. So I'm a big fan of this. A couple points, real quick points in regards to the site plan. And Jonathan, the question for you. The streetscape done by the village, I know that's not typical that, when developers come in that the village is paying for streetscape improvements. What's the thought process behind that?
Well, the subject project is in the downtown, and the vast majority of the downtown is a TIF district. By happenstance, the subject project isn't in the TIF district, so we don't have the ability to support this redevelopment. I think the redevelopment will incur a lot of costs that aren't found in new construction. And just as a tangent, I'd be curious if any of the development team knows the number of roll-off dumpsters that have come out of there. But since the ownership group has taken control of the property, they've been undertaking the interior demolition and getting ready to hit the ground running. So there's been just extensive demolition work done, just as one example. So I think staff recognizes that there are some costs in a redevelopment project that aren't found in new construction. We support the uses as you noted, and so I think the request and the village board ultimately hasn't taken any action on that request, but as staff is preparing, the thought process for the village's participation on the streetscape is to recognize that there are some redevelopment costs that are.
Sure, I understand that, and having a distinctive reason why we're doing this, I think is good, because obviously this may set a precedent in the future in regards to that, but I understand that. A couple other items, you look at the location of trash enclosures. They got two, one for the apartments, one for the retail. You may want to, just take a look at, how those are accessed, by truck, by garbage trucks. One other concern, I think, is, with the retail trash enclosure being right adjacent to the east property line. I don't know if some of the neighbors would have concerns in that. You may want to, look at, putting that closer to the retail building, if that works for the trash enclosure trucks. I'm sorry, the dump trucks. And then the last item has to do with parking. I know you said there's sufficient, parking, but I know there's also concerns of, which is a good thing, that, it's hard to find a parking spot in downtown Plainfield. And I'm not sure where that concern, I know, was there a study that was gonna be done in regards to downtown parking and that didn't happen, or?
Yeah, the village, through a consultant, did prepare an analysis of the existing parking capacity
Okay.
and the utilization rates in the downtown. The conclusion of that study was that there's generally somewhere between 40 and 50% of the existing parking space that we have available, even during some peak periods. It might not be right in front of the business or restaurant that folks are looking to go to. But for example, the what I call the library parking lot, the public parking on Illinois Street north of Lockport Street, is underutilized or is not at full capacity. So the study did anticipate the potential for this project coming online and kind of factored that in.
Right.
I will add that the village staff is prepared to request as part of our capital improvements, and that discussion should be forthcoming by the end of the month at the village board level. Yet another expansion of the North Des Plaines lot, so the lot that's on the west side of Des Plaines Street. Village doubled that in size just within the past couple of years, and there's some additional room to expand towards Main Street,
Okay.
Route 126.
Very good. You know, the last application I said we're completely overparked in Plainfield, but this is the one area that, you know, it might be a little bit tight, so I appreciate the analysis. Thank you.
Well, I just want to weigh on in because we're an advisory kind of board to help out the village board. Some things to keep in mind because it may come up in their meeting that there might be additional traffic or there might be additional light or noise. It has been under-functioning, kind of underutilized the past few years, but it had been a working fire station. And something to keep in mind is there were all kinds of noises coming from emergency vehicles coming around the property at all hours of the day and night as needed. So compared to a working fire station, anything proposed here is not going to be that obtrusive. And people lived near and chose to live near that working fire station. So I think that all of the commercial improvements would be just a wonderful thing for Plainfield. And I think if we keep in mind what had been there in the past and how it's underutilized, or it had been the past few years, I think that it would be a great addition to Plainfield, and I fully support it.
I had one brief question, but I'd like to make a note for the minutes, please. Just in fact that the group involved in the project are clients of the bank. They are involved with the bank. However, the bank currently is not working on anything with respect to this project, nor am I involved with any of the individuals with that capacity. So my question is with the apartment units as they're drawn here, it appears based on the size that most of them are studio. Is phase 2 also, are you thinking studio-based apartments, or is there a different mix?
Yes, that's what we're thinking right now, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
I had a couple questions. The currently unimproved alleyway, are you guys proposing to improve that then with the note here for putting new asphalt down there? Is that part of?
That's part of the project, right, to asphalt that area.
And so you're one way in?
That I think is the area that the gentleman was referring to.
Right. So that's where he's concerned with maintaining access to his property. So you're one way in from the west, one way out to the north. Is this then just unsigned? Are you guys counting on that for ingress and egress to the parking lot, or is that just sort of a nice gesture to the neighbors to improve that alleyway for their use?
I mean, I don't see it as being a prime access area.
Okay.
I wouldn't think.
Are you talking about the east?
I'm talking about the.
This one here, I think.
Correct. Yes.
That is not intended to be the prime access point.
Okay.
So the circulation would basically come in here and out.
Okay. What is the size limit for monument signs? I mean, how far? The 8 by.
Oh, so that would have
far
been
over are
a
we?
salient fact to include in the report. What's currently permitted is, I think, a maximum of 4 feet in height and 24 square feet in sign area, which is half the size of a monument sign you could have on Route 59 in terms of the sign area. So their 48 square feet is in keeping with what would be allowed in a different location, and the height is somewhat less.
So the square footage is roughly
It's about
double then. Okay. I would just echo what the other commissioners have said in terms of support of this project. I think it'll be a great addition to downtown. I would also agree with some of the staff's recommendations. Obviously, the type of restaurant you put in there might determine what kind of, if it makes sense to put the garage door application in. I think it would, personally would be great. Obviously, if it's a nicer dining establishment, maybe that doesn't fit with their theme, but if there's any way to maintain that, I think that would be a good representation of what the building was, and then continuing its useful and neat look in the future. And then as far as lighting study, I think that would be prudent in this case, just with the adjacent properties. I'm not sure what the intent is to provide lighting back there in the parking lot, but a study might be worthwhile, particularly with some of the adjacent residents, to make sure that nothing is falling onto their property that we wouldn't want to encroach.
Well, certainly, whatever lighting we have that's proposed out there will certainly provide photometrics information to staff.
Excellent. Just a couple other notes I had. So there's been talk of planters, maybe a permanent planter at the kind of the edge of where you have your canopy demarcation might be nice as well, just to add in some landscaping and then make a permanent demarcation between sort of the public space and what would then be the restaurant seating. Just as a kind of comment to reiterate that's been made here. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things. First of all, you know, I definitely compliment you on the use and the project. I mean, it's nice to see that this building is going to be kept and utilized. I think, you know, staff's made some valid recommendations. I mean, like you said too, I mean, you may want to, you know, kind of see what kind of tenants you are going to attract on the ground floor before you finalize that facade design. I mean, obviously, if you can play up the, you know, kind of the history of the fire station kind of a look, I mean, that might really be appropriate. I think the one question I had, and I mean, obviously the second phase, we know it's future, designs could change, but you're kind of creating a courtyard space between the existing building and the new, and then there's a talk about a private fenced courtyard. Is that
For the residential.
is that to give them some kind of a little patio area? Is that the idea?
A little patio area, maybe a
Okay.
grill area
Where they could have a grill or something like that, or, okay, because I know staff made a recommendation about possibly trying to look at balconies for the units, which, obviously you can look at that, but that's gonna change the exterior
Right, this
as
was
well.
sort of our solution to that, to
Mhm.
make sure that everybody had at least some outside.
Okay, so that makes, yeah, because it looks like, the units you're setting them up with like a central laundry room. And, yeah, I mean, if the residents did have a little patio area where they could have a grill down there and, some patio furniture, and it's somewhat private, I think that makes some sense. In terms of the site, obviously that one house that faces Oak Street, I mean, it's existing. I mean, I'm sure they live there, whoever lives there, they've, lived there alongside the fire department and the ambulances and everything else. So, it would seem to me that parking that's in that area to the north along going up to Oak Street, that might make sense to designate that as the residential parking, only because you'd want to keep obviously the commercial parking behind the building as close as you can, and you're going to be able to rely on the on-street parking and, the village parking lot across the street and everything for the retail and the commercial. But I'm just thinking maybe designating that parking on that north stretch there up to Oak as the, residential parking, in other words, assigned space per unit. That would tend to keep that a little quieter, less in and out traffic, and as opposed to commercial traffic alongside that house. Now, things could change in the future,
Sure. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. I don't know that they've completely decided which area to designate as residential, but
Right.
some would be. So thank you for the suggestion. We'll
Yeah,
take a
I
look
mean,
at
and obviously until you build that second future phase, obviously there's gonna be more parking available there too. So, I mean, things can change in the future. I'm just thinking in the end, that might make the most sense to be the residential parking. It's still close by for the residents, but hopefully it would keep it a little bit quieter, less in and out, traffic out of those parking spaces is what I'm thinking. So, And as far as that alley to the east, I mean, so is that alley actually going to be privately owned, or is that still a dedicated village alley? That's what I think we've talked about it, but I'm not sure.
Did you address that, Jonathan?
No, it's currently a public right of way.
Right.
I think staff's feeling is if this improvement is not required or doesn't serve the development, and if it's not something that the neighbors are looking for per se, then perhaps we could evaluate whether it makes sense to install. So at this point, what I've heard at least is that it's not something that the petitioner.
You know, I thought I was mistaken, Jonathan, when you mentioned that, but this is actually private. They bought that.
Oh, okay. That's.
Yeah. So thanks for reminding me, Angelo, that this is actually.
Okay.
May not have shown up on the yeah, it shows up. It's here, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But that will, I guess, it will benefit those homeowners to the east on Illinois if they also have access to it. And like you said, it's not going to be used as a primary,
Can I get you to
circulation.
go back to the microphone too. We
Oh,
can't hear you.
I
Thank you.
apologize. Yep.
Okay, I guess that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. So we have two requests this evening. One is for the special use, the other is for the site plan. The chair would entertain a motion if there is one for the special use.
I move we adopt the findings of fact of staff as the findings of fact of the Plan Commission, and furthermore recommend approval of the proposed plan development for the Station 1 mixed-use redevelopment at 15025 South Desplain Street, subject to the following two stipulations. 1, compliance with the requirements of the village engineer, and 2, compliance with the requirements of the Plainfield Fire Protection District.
I can second that.
Okay, so a motion has been made and seconded regarding the special use. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Mr. Heinen,
Yes.
Mr. Womack,
Yes.
Mr. Segerbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Renzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Chairman Kiefer.
Yes. So this motion passes. In regards to the site plan
Well,
review, I would take a...
First of all, I have a question to staff. For the monument sign, you said the PUD agreement would then give them basically double for the monument sign. Is that going to require the third stipulation, or where would that go?
So the actual vehicle that potentially would be approved by the Board of Trustees will be a plan development agreement that will have some provisions. One provision would be approval of a monument sign of up to, I believe that calculates to 48 square feet. If we have time and the applicant is able to, we could maybe work up a conceptual sketch of what that might look like, but really we'd just be seeking approval of a sign up to a maximum square footage. I believe it was 48 square feet.
Would that be then a third stipulation to the site plan review?
Well, that's what I had addressed it earlier. I'd asked him if we needed to have a variance
Yeah,
or anything addressed as an amendment, and you said no at that time.
Yeah, since the site plan review doesn't confer any approval for signage, I know sometimes petitioners will show it on the buildings and so forth. That's a separate administrative permit. It will really be covered in the plan development approval in terms of being allowed that square
I
footage.
guess this is another reason why we need the cover sheet, because we can show that we discussed it and it's contemplated that it would be basically double for monument, but you wouldn't find it in any of our motions then.
It's in, at the very beginning of the analysis section.
Well, I
for
understand that,
plan
but it's not in
development.
our motions.
Correct.
Okay. In which case then I can make a motion that we,
Well, real quick, sorry. Is that the same then with the landscape and photometric review too then? In terms of, I mean, typically on the site plan at this point when we approve it, we see that.
Right.
Those two items, is that?
If the commission is comfortable with the stipulation, that would be, I think, an appropriate stipulation to
Add to it too. Okay.
Something along the lines that the applicant will work with staff in regards to landscaping,
submit
photometrics.
landscaping and photometric, correct.
Did you want to include that as part of your
Sure.
motion?
so I would move that we recommend approval of the requested site plan review for the Station 1 mixed-use redevelopment at 15025 South Des Plaines, subject to the 2 stipulations set forth in the planner's report, and a 3rd stipulation requiring compliance of the applicant to work with staff and the ultimate submittal of a landscaping and a photometric plan.
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion has been made and seconded with the 3rd stipulation added regarding the site plan review. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Commissioner Heinen,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Segebrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Renzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Chairman Kiefer.
Yes, so the motion regarding the site plan is also approved. So what will happen then is please keep in touch with staff.
Sure.
They will let you know when you're set to appear before the village
Thank you.
board.
And on behalf of the owners, I'd like to thank everyone for your time and your consideration and your valuable input, and we'll schedule a meeting with staff as soon as we can.
Okay, well, good luck with your project. It sounds very
Thank you.
exciting. Very good. So we have 2 more cases under new business. The next case we're going to call is case number 1750-123016.CP. This is a request for a concept plan review. Do we have a planner's report regarding this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next 2 cases we have are kind of related. They're joined at the hip, or joined at 127th Street at least, but we'll take them one at a time. Staff has had the opportunity to work with the applicants for a number of months, actually going back a year or more, to provide some input and refinement on the concept plans for these 2 proposed residential projects. The first of which is located on 127th Street, or on the south side of 127th Street, west of Napier Plainfield Road. This is a portion of property that was actually annexed into the village 20 years back, or a little bit more. So it's within the village of Plainfield's corporate limits, subject to a previous annexation agreement. The property does extend to the east and west sides of the DuPage River, although the development plan is really limited to the west side of the river. The narrow portion west of Napier Plainfield Road would be surplus open space area. In terms of site context, it is contiguous to the village's Lake Michigan water storage tank and pumping station on 127th Street. To the north is vacant or agricultural property, including extensive acreage that was purchased within the last few years by the Forest Preserve District of Will County. So there's a large extension of the Riverview Farmstead Forest Preserve, and as well the segment of the regional DuPage River Trail multi-use bike path that we have a segment of here coming through the downtown area would extend up to the north. To the west we have agricultural property, to the south, and then to the east there is some existing single-family residential, the Farmstone Ridge and the Lakelands to the southeast. As the commission is familiar, the concept plan review process allows for some preliminary input and consensus to provide direction on any significant issues. In this case, staff has not identified any major issues that we're trying to take the commission's temperature on. We feel that the proposed uses are appropriate, and just to give a brief overview, the project is proposed to include a majority of single-family detached lots, and I have the numbers here. Bear with me. A total of 207 homes on 128 acres. That would be a gross density of approximately 1.6 units per acre. The subject site is identified in the comprehensive plan as the low-density residential future land use designation that corresponds with a density range of 1.4 to 2 units per acre. So the proposed density at 1.6 is well within that range. The 270 homes will be made up of a combination of 167 detached single-family lots and 40 duplex units. Project does include an extensive dedicated park site, kind of in the central eastern area. This would be contiguous or backing up to the river, and the expansive detention area that would provide an amenity, kind of a water feature and a little bit of a vista for the project. As well, there are a number of smaller pocket parks that are distributed throughout the residential neighborhood, so that will provide some additional green space and open space. The petitioner has worked extensively with both the Plainfield Park District and the Forest Preserve District of Will County to gain their support for the proposed park configuration and the routing of that DuPage River Trail, which on this exhibit, find a different exhibit here, would be located on the east side of the project, so east of the proposed detention area. This would be the regional trail heading north and south. This would provide an opportunity to get under the 127th Street bridge and provide continuity for the extensive regional trail. And then the developer would also construct a path connection from within the project. Here you can see along the park, the sidewalk network and the path would extend along 127th Street and along Book Road to the north as well would be an opportunity for connections. So just very briefly, staff identified a handful of topics to frame the discussion. For land use and density, staff supports the mix of single-family, detached, and duplex homes. We feel the density is well within the range of the comprehensive plan. The minimum lot size is 9,100 square feet. The average lot size is 9,600 square feet. And those are kind of minimums and averages, so a number of the lots would be well above that. In terms of the land plan, staff really compliments the applicant on the land plan. We're very satisfied and feel that this would be an attractive project. Regarding vehicular access, the project does propose one stub street to the south, so this would allow for a future road access to development to the south if that were to take place. Staff does note that there may be either a desire or potentially a requirement for an additional dedicated access point from 127th Street to provide 2 points of access, in particular for emergency services. So in having preliminary discussions with the Plainfield Fire Protection District, I think we would hopefully work with the applicant to identify a second point of access from day one, so not counting on this future road stub. One opportunity would be to incorporate an emergency access point that would take advantage of the village's ownership here. So that's just one alternative, but certainly something that staff and the petitioner are prepared to discuss as the project were to move from a concept plan stage to a more formalized plan. Staff also would welcome input from the commission on whether you would like to see a future road stub to the west as well, or if you're comfortable with the road network otherwise as proposed. In terms of engineering and stormwater management, the majority of the detention would be provided adjacent to the DuPage River. I know there are sometimes differing views on kind of online storm detention being adjacent to the river in a flood fringe area, or in this case there are also some benefits to that. So the petitioner has identified they've worked extensively on their preliminary engineering to make sure that the footprint of the land uses that are shown, so including the footprint of the detention, would be sufficient to meet their future stormwater management needs, not just for detention, but for the compensatory storage for the potential impacts within the floodplain. So that is an area that the petitioner has paid some specific attention to and is comfortable with. So in general, from staff's initial review, we're comfortable, very supportive of the plan as proposed. There is the issue of looking for options for a secondary access point, in particular for emergency access. But overall, staff supports the plan. Given that it's annexed into the village, if the applicant were to move forward, the next steps would be for most likely a special use for plan development that would provide the flexibility for the lot sizes as proposed. And then it would just be a matter of the preliminary and final platting the subdivision at a time of their choosing. So there would be no annexation and nothing of that nature. So that concludes the brief staff overview. I know welcome input from the commission, and the petitioner is here as well.
Okay, thank you. Is someone here representing the applicant? Could you approach that microphone, please? And I will need to swear you in, so if you could raise your right hand. You swear any testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Could you please state your name for the recording secretary?
John Lazinski, J. Edward Land, LLC. I'm the development consultant for the ownership of this parcel.
Okay, would you like to add anything to what we've heard?
Just a couple minor points for clarification. The property was annexed in 1994, and the annexation density provided for this parcel is actually 2.75 units per acre. And again, just to put that in context, you know, theoretically, that would allow 353 units, because it was on a gross basis. We're roughly 50% of that. So just to kind of put it in base perception. What is the couple things that Jonathan touched on that I just want to expand on, and
You should be able to take
is
that.
this like Mr.
It should
Microphone?
come up. There you go.
Yeah, I'm better walking around and talking. In the site plan, what's hard to see at this kind of scale is we did contemplate the entrance here actually to function as a dual access, because this will be 3 lanes, one straight turn lane to the right and a through lane in. So this was already planned to be extra wide, and once you got to this point, obviously you got 2 points of ingress and egress to either side. Originally, when we had this bike path on this side of the pond, and through our number of meetings with the Will County Forest Preserve and the Park District, they actually preferred it on the, I'll call it the river side of the pond, between the river and the detention pond, understanding that in large rainfall events, that bike path may become inundated with water, but the Forest Preserve was very comfortable with that. In this zone, west of the river, this is actually not, it's in floodplain, but not floodway. You can excavate down in that flood, and I'm not the drainage engineer. You can excavate down, and this is not considered online storage. This area to the west, to the east of the river, is actually in floodway. And for the most part, this would be very difficult to develop, you know, because almost this whole property is part of that. The concept, and through our discussions with both entities, is there will, once we have a plan approved, the intent is this parcel, this basin, and these 2 basins will actually go to the ownership of the Will County Forest Preserve. Kind of, we're doing some trading here that will help them get their regional path. The park location actually is probably in its 3rd location, and actually evolved based on where the Park District wanted it to interact with the Forest Preserve District. So a lot of that has come in hand together. Other thing, and I don't know how many of you drive 127th Street, over the last, I'll call it 3 to 4 years, there's been landscaping added. About 3 years ago, we added it along the water storage facility, and we came in this fall and added in about another $20,000 with the landscaping, evergreens, and things that basically we've started putting in that berm and buffering between these future residents and the water facility. We've worked with the village, and actually most of that, all that planting is on the village's property, but we've been working cooperatively, because ownership bought this during the downturn, as they did roughly, I guess, another 16, 1,700 acres in the village of Plainfield, but this being the easterlymost one, it's probably the first one to come to marketplace. The concept with both parcels here is both ownerships decided to work together, because what happens is the apartments were developed here. There's going to be a need for a sanitary sewer lift station to service these properties. So the concept is coordinate accesses, because the idea of 127th Street being an arterial, we wanted to get those main access ways coordinated, provide location, it'll probably be over here, for a lift station that'll serve both properties. The Plainfield Park District has a park here, so that map we showed with the bike path, this will tie into what the Forest Preserve has and what they're planning for the river property. They do not own this piece here, but the path will cross at our intersection, come along the north side, and tie to the Plainfield Park District's piece. They didn't want vehicular access to it. They did want a bike path that would connect that facility to this facility and the regional path. So those were all kind of pieces that we worked out, and then we finessed the land plan for both parcels. But staying on the Riverstone parcel, again, the intent for the duplexes is really to be an age-targeted product, a ranch or a master down. That's why there's a limited number of them, you know, for people like me that are the kids are out of college and are looking to be close to grandkids and things. That's why you got a limited number. It's not a big townhome community. The feeling is Riverstone would be more the semi-custom builder orientated to, you know, the builders that have done that in the Naperville, Plainfield market over the last 20 plus years. And the Brummel piece, as we evolve to the north and the west and we get closer to the existing apartments, would go towards more of a, I'll call a production builder. We go the single family and then the townhome program, kind of in an overall picture. The pocket parks, just to make sure everyone understands, those, because staff likes them, but those are not something that goes to the park district. Those will be owned and maintained by the Association for Riverstone. The main park will go to the Plainfield Park District, but the Park District doesn't want these small neighborhood gathering spots, but they are important for livability and sense of community. Just to go back real quickly on the 167 single-family homes, it's roughly 80% of the site are single-family homes, and 19.3% are the duplex product. And then we have that long landscape area. So, in working on an access, we can work with staff on that. I've got a couple ideas. And
so you're talking about the potential western access?
I should touch on that for the site. Roughly goes like this. This drains to the south and east. This portion actually drains to the Norman Drain. So there's actually a little floodplain that comes in here, and a big portion of this is floodplain between us and the Norman Drain. So actually we probably should do a little more drainage design and actually bring the village's staff up to speed on some of the drainage work our engineers have already done to make that decision. You know, does it make sense, or what's going to happen in this rectangular area, quite frankly, because that may be an area that actually, quite frankly, isn't heavily developed, and you go west of that or south of that because of that, I'll call it drainage ditch, but does carry a very large area.
So you're saying it may not even be developable based on the fact
that rectangular area may not be. It may,
yeah.
Its highest and best use may be for the stormwater,
yeah,
in some areas. That's why we, you know, the prior plans never had a stub that way, and we tried to stay away from doing that because of the stormwater, you know, but we tried to take all the staff comments we've heard, you know, not having cul-de-sacs, but having the curvilinear streets, having the things that people want in neighborhoods, and trying to eliminate long straight runs. You know, I guess our longest run is this main street that comes in. Clearly it's not straight, But again, ending in a very nice, long focal over green space and the water.
Well, from what you're saying, though, it appears that towards the south end, you could put a west stub in. Then because
Yeah, well, we got one
it's
here.
like-
We may, yeah, there may be something there and that we haven't thought about at this point. That's kind of why, you know, we're coming here.
Because the difference.
Let me hold questions for a second. So I'll get this out of the way real quick. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to comment on this case? In the audience, public? Okay, seeing none, I will open it up to commissioners, so feel free to go ahead and ask the applicant or staff questions.
Well, since I started.
Go ahead. Please continue.
So, because there's 126th Street and there's 135th Street, they're basically about a mile apart. So I'm figuring that probably, how far deep does your thing go? It looks like about a half mile.
I didn't bring the survey with me, but that's 2,600 feet's probably a fair
About.
gap. That's, you're within the realm of realistic numbers.
So at the far south, you could put a west stub in that basically would be halfway between 126th and 131st Street.
And then at that point, the real question, the only question is, do you want two to the south or one to the south?
Okay. No, I understand. But
yes, can we do that? Absolutely.
okay. And the other thing that I'm confused about then is the water, because I always thought the water needed to be separate from the river, and you're
It is
talking
separate.
about an overflow in the park, or the county knows that the path is going to be underwater. Well, if that goes underwater, then the water is all going to mix, so I'm confused.
At some point, it will mix.
Okay.
Just like in any stormwater basin you have in town, at some point they do mix. You will have a pond that is notched in here, and at some point you will have an overflow weir. For the simplistic discussion, this bike path basically is going to sit on the top of the berm, so you have,
Right.
depending on what way I'm going.
So you're
you
going to
have
be
river
above
down
the river
here,
and above
we
the
have
retention
stormwater.
pond.
As your stormwater fills and crests at a 100-year event, it will go over the berm, across the bike path to the river. And that's where
So-
it naturally goes now.
So what he's saying is that there's a stormwater detention, so the area or the volume below that berm is actually detention. Above that is floodplain compensatory storage. This is very similar to the application that we had behind the Meyer.
Yeah, the one that didn't move forward.
That didn't.
That's what I was
So it's
trying to
same
figure out.
same concept as that.
Oh, okay. And the other thing, since we're kind of mixing and matching, we've had a lot of people who've come back to us to say, oh no, we can't build townhouses, we can't build anything other than single-family houses, and they can't be age dependent. So you to have 20% of yours with a duplex, I assume, but you didn't say, some market research went into this. Why do you think you can build and market duplexes?
A couple reasons. One, the market's there for the product. A lot of townhome developments, and years ago I ran a public builder, one of the bigger ones in Chicago. The market is there for the product. It's getting there. Demographics will show you every day it's getting stronger and stronger. What you can't really do is a couple things. In the downturn, a lot of the townhome communities or neighborhoods were 120, 180 plus units. That move-down buyer wants really a couple things. One, they're going to go towards a truly age-restricted Del Webbian type thing where it's highly amenitized, or they want discrete neighborhoods that work well within an existing neighborhood where grandma and grandpa can be close to the grandkids, the married daughter, the son-in-law, you know, because that extended family, you know, while you want them close, they provide daycare, they want to be close to that. You know, I'm actually doing that right now on my own personal level that way. That's why we have 40 units. We're not saying we're gonna restrict it, you know, do a deed restriction. We're just by design targeting it for that builder. And actually, we'll be starting to design that product for application in a different community that'll probably be, it's probably a year and a half ahead of this project. You know, we met with the marketing team just yesterday on that, and we're very comfortable with that. You know, I would be very concerned if I was trying to do a $200,000 first time move up buyer townhome program that's a 3-story walk up. I'm building that product in Geneva right now, and most of our buyers are actually move down buyers, but that it's not because of the stairs. They want to be there because it's 2 blocks from downtown and they can walk to the restaurants. They can walk to the bars. They don't have to get in, you know, you come home on Friday, you don't ever have to get in your car the rest of the weekend. You know, it's this piece right here outside Village Hall. You know, there's a for sale sign on it, and I envision that at some point being some type of higher density townhome that may be more vertical living, but it's probably going to attract that move down buyer that's truly active adult that wants to be able to walk to town. This is more 1-story living, maybe a 1.5 story living, that's truly the person that doesn't want the stairs.
Okay. And for just general, for the homeowners association, is everybody going to be in the same association, or are you going to have like 2 with a master, or how's that going to work?
For a development like this, you'll have 2. You'll have 1 master association that'll include everyone. The duplexes would have a sub-association, which would handle the landscape maintenance, building maintenance for that association. You know, you've probably all seen duplexes or they've been built, and it's each homeowner maintains the outside of their building. I wouldn't envision that. I would envision all exterior maintenance is handled by an HOA, so you have a certain level of quality and consistency. Because the rest of the
more like condominiums, so to speak, than
or
really
a
duplex.
townhome or something like that. Yeah, because the rest of the HOA, quite frankly, will only need to maintain the pocket parks, because through what we've been able to work out with the Forest Preserve District, they're going to take and own the storm basins. Now, the normal burning of the native grasses, you know, every couple of years, they'll do that. But any maintenance of storm piping that are related to stormwater management, you know, the HOA would need to maintain it. So there'll be a budget, there'll be an operating HOA, but, you know, this landscape island and these tot lots, that's where they're going to be. So we're going to be able to have a cost advantage over a number of HOAs.
Okay. And I have one more question. You heard staff talk about a second entry point off of 126th Street and the possibility of just having it with a non-public passage through the water treatment zone. Is that something you can work with staff about?
That is something I think we got to get everybody in the room on. And the reason I say that, originally we thought the bike path here would act as that, and we could beef that up. Putting something through here may or may not meet all the demands of all the departments in town.
Yeah, well,
And
that has
the
to be
reason I
good enough
say
to
that
quote
is
for
I
the
believe,
truck,
if I remember
fire
right,
trucks. Yeah.
there's a plan for a second storage facility on this property somewhere. So besides the fire department and planning, we're going to have to get the engineers involved. But there's a way to solve that. If it's increasing the width here, or if it's bringing a driveway here, you know, we've got to just talk to all the, you know, stakeholders in that. Because I also know through one of our discussions, there is thought that this bridge is going to get redone at some point. and spacing of access points and how we handle that. You know, the traffic engineers are gonna have a point. But getting a second access or making the fire department happy, we're gonna be able to do that. That I'm highly confident of.
Any other commissioners would like to comment on this concept plan?
I just, along those lines, continuing, I'd rather see a well thought out second entrance or fire emergency access than the sort of demarcated emergency access, not for public. Just kind of looks like poor planning in my opinion, so.
Right.
I'd rather address it up front and make it integrated into the overall plan and kind of look nice,
That
I
will
guess.
definitely be done.
So Jonathan, the applicant mentioned a sanitary sewer lift station. Is that gonna be a public-owned lift station then?
I think it would depend. I need to evaluate that further. When the apartment project was constructed, there were some provisions there to either upsize that. I need to explore that further.
The reason why I asked is because, you know, so they're providing a lift station for these two developments. You know, my hope is that Public Works is looking at not only this property, but all the undeveloped property around it. I'd hate to have, you know, 5 different lift stations for every new development that comes, you know, around this. So I encourage staff to look more globally rather than, you know, both these developments. Another question is 127th Street. I know it's in rough condition. What's the plan for improvements for 127th?
So using probably the apartment project as a guide, just because it's a more recent example, now 3-4 years, I guess.
Yeah.
They paid a traffic impact fee towards the resurfacing at least of that and dedicated the necessary right-of-way.
Okay.
So you can see on the plan here, they're proposing to dedicate you know, the 60-foot half-width or would achieve 120-foot full-width right-of-way dedication.
Okay.
The project to the north, which we'll talk about next, that would require annexation into the village. And so there would be an opportunity for negotiation, discussion by way of annexation agreement.
Is this a village DOT road or is this township?
It's village here at this location, I believe. It's kind of a combination based on the limits of annexation, but this frontage, given that it's been annexed into the village's jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, I know with the townhomes that came, I'm sorry, with the apartments, you know, that came up as a discussion point of, you know, building the ultimate section of that roadway. You know, at some point, we got to start thinking about that. You know, you do kind of a hodgepodge at the right turn lanes or whatever, you know, to accommodate, you know, these individual developments. But, you know, ultimately this road's going to have to get improved because this is one of our major thoroughfares, you know, for the village of Plainfield. So I'm assuming that's going into consideration with these applications, and, you know, that, you know, it's more of a village board issue than our issue. But, you know, my concern about doing what we did at the apartments is it seems like it's kind of a hodgepodge, and we need to look at this more of a, you know, global improvement. That's all I had. Thank you.
Other commissioners want to weigh in?
I just wanted to say I think it's you know, a great plan. I really like the duplex. You know, I don't think we have enough of that in town. I mean, we, you know, obviously have a lot of single family, a lot of townhouses, but we have very few duplexes, and it makes sense the way you're talking about marketing them. So, and I think being, you know, closer to the water treatment plant there, it, you know, makes sense too. I think it kind of sets that area off and then lets the single family, you know, be its own thing. So, but you know, certainly I think getting a second access point is important. I mean, doing a second stub street out at the south end, maybe pointing towards the west. When you look at the aerial and you see, I think it's, well, Graver and the ponds to the west there, you have to believe that someday there's going to be some development that's going to get a connectivity there. So I think that's something, at least to keep in mind, that maybe there would potentially be a stub that direction too.
I do like what I've been hearing about the second access to the north, just to the east of the water property. If the, ground is such and the elevations that it would accommodate there, I think that would be a good access and it wouldn't take away too much of the usable land from the housing. Overall, I like the plan. I just think the lots are a little small. If you could reduce a few more lots and bump up by, get it a little closer. We still have 12,000 square feet on the books, right, Jonathan? Even though with these planned developments, that really doesn't apply, right? But
That's correct.
technically, it's on the books until we have someone remove it. So, that's what I stick to. So, but overall, I think
The
it's a
annexation
good idea.
agreement, just so you know, did not have 12,000.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but understand what I'm saying too. It's still on the books, so that's where I'm coming from.
I like the plan as well. I agree with the comments about the access to the north and some kind of access stub, either to the west or kind of that southwest quadrant. One question was with that pathway going along the river. I know you explained the berm and the detention and river in event of a flood, but was that a requirement that be put over there by the Forest Preserve?
That was a direct request from the Forest
Okay.
Preserve District. Because, quite frankly, my background says keep those away from being underwater.
Sure.
And they were very comfortable with it, because
Well, and it just seems like you create a natural barrier for the people living in the neighborhood to get to their path.
well, the
'Cause they would
thought
have to
was
go all
they
the way
could, we
around the
could tie
detention.
this way or tie down here.
Sure.
What they wanted to do was have separation for people that are going on a long bike ride or walking long distances, a little separation from the backyards, so they wanted to use this as separation. So that was a distinct request. Because the other concern is obviously water coming from our basin in a flood event overtopping going over the river.
Right.
But we've all seen it, you're in a river town, where this basin could be drained down, but the events from the north, the river starts going up, and the water can actually come up over the path from this side too.
Yeah.
So they could be underwater at two separate times from a major rainfall event in the spring or summer. But they were very comfortable with that, and it was a direct request from them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've had some discussion. I would entertain a motion regarding support or denial of this concept plan.
Oh, I can move, we recommend approval of the concept plan for the proposed Riverstone project south of 127th Street and west of Naperville Plainfield Road.
Second?
Okay, so a motion has been made and seconded regarding approval of the concept plan for this application. Can we get a vote by roll call, please?
Commissioner Menace,
Yes.
Commissioner Heinen,
Yes.
Mr. Womack,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
No.
Commissioner Segerbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Renzi,
Yes.
Chairman Kiefer.
Yes. So this motion for approval of the concept plan has been approved. What'll happen is this will go forward to the village board. So obviously keep in touch with staff to see where you are on the board's agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for coming this evening and explaining your concept.
I'll just stand here, because he's gonna have me come back for the
Maybe
next
come
one.
back up for the next one. All right, so sit quietly and, no. Well, okay, we'll move directly into our final case this evening, which is case number 1749-123016.CP, referred to as the Brummel property. This is a request for a concept plan, and the area is generally north of 127th Street and west of Naperville Road. Do we have a planner's report regarding this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep my report brief here, given that we're familiar with the context. Specific to the property on the north, it's approximately 55 acres, so a little bit smaller than the previous project, being proposed for development with a total of 164 homes, again, slightly smaller than the Riverstone project. That housing product would be made up of a combination of 87 single-family detached lots at a density of approximately 1.9 units per acre. If you look at just the area devoted for the a single family in the open space. And then in addition, a pod of 77 townhomes proposed. The townhomes would be on the western side of the property. This would be in closest proximity to the apartment project that was developed here recently. To the at the northwest corner, it would be contiguous with the Plainfield Park District park site that was dedicated by the apartment project. There is I believe it's a 5-acre farmstead or homestead fronting on 127th Street as well. So in terms of the land use and density, staff believes the mix of single-family homes and townhomes is appropriate given the future land use designation of the comprehensive plan. The minimum lot size for single-family would be approximately 8,400 or 8,500 square feet. In terms of the land plan, there is a similar concern or thought process, at least, of providing multiple access, making sure there's adequate access, in particular during emergency events. So the single-family pod, as currently planned, has a single boulevard entry point, and then the townhome pod has its own boulevard access point. So staff would look for the opportunity to work with the applicant and the fire district to see if additional access is warranted, or if there's a possibility of connecting the two pods, recognizing that the east branch of the Norman Drain does cross through here, so making that connection would be a little bit complicated in terms of an environmental and permitting aspects. So there might be some pros and cons to it's not a matter of simply extending a road to achieve that. Would take some engineering and some sensitivity to the environmental resources there. This property is different from Riverstone in that it's not currently annexed into the village, so development would require annexation agreement. The townhome component would require site plan review, so we'd be looking more specifically at the elevations, the parking, landscaping, and so forth in terms of what future entitlements would need to come before the Plan Commission. But in general, staff supports the project in the land plan, and would welcome additional questions and direction from the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anyone here representing the applicant?
Yep.
Okay, now this isn't typical. I know we've swore you in for the last case. I'm going to swear you in again just to cover our bases, because we have a separate case here and also a separate applicant. So you swear that all testimony you're about to give regarding this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
And can you state your name again for the record?
John Lazinski, President J. Edward Land.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on this particular case?
Yes. Can you go to the prior site plan, just or prior picture, just for a second? Go back to the. I'm just touching on this as we have our discussion with as we did with Riverstone with Brumwell. We've lined up these accesses and actually tried to maximize spacing, understanding the long-term design intent for 127th Street, with an access here, and obviously while you have this 5-acre parcel here with the park here, figuring there will be some point another access point here. So trying, as traffic engineers try to do, is space out the access points, because this is a large piece under single ownership that someday may or may not be developed, but we've got to think that, should it develop, where are they going to be asked to have access points? All right, John, we can go to the other plan now. Just go to just the Brumwell plan now. All right, as Jonathan said, the east drain or the Norman drain, or the west, the east drain, comes right here. It's going to involve actually replacing the existing culvert pipe that is undersized today. So there is some floodplain in this area, so the stormwater management facility and the drain and the detention on both sides are all planned to act together. So from a connectivity standpoint, should we put a conspan or something like that across that, it's going to lead to basically bridge maintenance on a public street down the road. That's why we've kept them separate and distinct. when ownership bought this property, it was after the prior concept plan was approved. The single-family lots on this side were actually significantly smaller. While they were 60 foot in width, they were much shallower than what we're showing. And we've updated the plan, so as you come in, like we did with Riverstone, trying to end in a focal point, a pocket park that the neighborhood would maintain, but also try to anchor the community, since the Park District did not want to park on this piece because they have their park site here. And it's tied, you know, we're tying together from that bike path and sidewalk exhibit. On this side of the plan, the prior concept plan showed small single-family lot program that the bank had approved, previously processed, but that was prior to the apartments being built. So the thought was, as I mentioned before, with the apartments here, to transition to a townhome community, to single-family, to bigger single-family, more semi-custom in nature. So that's how kind of how we work the land plan. But again, trying to tie in the roadway. A portion of this site comes this way on drainage, but most of it does go to the Norman Drain. The other reason putting this access in this location is to allow for the needed turn lanes and tapers and still be within right-of-way, because since this property is outside the village, nor the village has no way of getting the right-of-way for widening east of this line here. On this side, obviously, we'd have to do all the improvements on the, basically north of the center line. For access here, one of the things I thought with this 5-acre parcel probably would make sense to take this road and stub it, relocate that building in some fashion, so as this plan evolves, you can put an access that would serve that property if and when it develops. But again, comment was made on the lift station before. Part of the reason in this part of the town that you got one or possibly two or maybe even 3 lift stations, I'm losing track, is the depth of rock. It's very prevalent in this area, and actually as you go north up to the Polo Club, it's even shallower. It's generally 8 to 12 feet in depth on Riverstone. I don't remember what it's here, but it's in that range, so you're trying to skim across the top with the sanitary source. That's kind of what leads to some of these lift stations also. But other than that, you know, we're trying to take the same care, the same group that's working on Riverstone in terms of engineer, planner, are working on Brummel, so we're doing everything in a coordinated fashion, so it's coordinated. Park District did not want park site here. They want to take the cash here. Some of that would go for their park improvements as well as the bike path improvements that they want to do. Where Riverstone, the park obligation's fully handled in land, they wanted to take the cash from this parcel. Also, what's different is since there is no nexus of tying to that regional bike path, the Forest Preserve said, we'll take these basins and maintain them. This piece, the HOA needs to own them and maintain the basins and the drain area. So there'll be some little subtle differences on who maintains what, but it's all been coordinated and worked through with the Park District as well as the Will County Forest Preserve. And as we get a plan that's approvable, we'll be finalizing documents with them.
Thank you. At this time, is there anybody in the audience, public, that would like to comment on this case? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, I will open up comments and questioning to the commissioners. Commissioners, you're free to ask questions or comment on this case.
Well, I have for the applicant, on the townhouses, you said there was some connectivity to the west, but I don't, it may be on there, but I don't see it.
No, my comment was the comment from the fire department about making connectivity. Way we can address it on this plan is we could relocate this building and make this more a T intersection and provide a stop.
Oh, okay.
It's not done. It's something anticipating the
you can
discussion we
draw.
just had on Riverstone. I was just throwing that out there to basically kind of save time.
Okay, and you also mentioned an annexation agreement, but there isn't one, is there?
No,
Yeah,
that was
staff was merely pointing out that were this project to proceed, it would require annexation into the village, so that would be a subsequent, discussion. And there would be opportunity for identifying, traffic improvements as one potential area.
And would we also not have to have the minimum lot size incorporated in that annexation agreement as well? Because 8450 is less than 12.
That is something that would likely be identified in the annexation agreement and covered as well.
Okay. And then the final question I have for the applicant, again, you made reference vaguely to homeowner association. So is each pod going to have their own, or is there going to be a master one, or how is that going to be configured?
More than likely, just like Riverstone. I mean, I haven't thought this one all the way through because the drain does provide some challenges.
Right.
You could do a master that would maintain the berming and landscape along 127th, or we could split it with the drain, that being the Townhome Association, this being the single family, which may be a cleaner way to do it since there's two separate monuments and entranceways off 127th. We just got to think that one through a little bit.
I would say, though, that you're right, it would be cleaner in the sense that one's got to do the west and one's got to do the east. But if one does the west and the other one doesn't do the east, we have a real problem. So for a village standpoint, I'm thinking maybe have an individual one so we
For the
may have like
stormwater.
3 with an individual for each one, and then have the master deal with the drain.
Jonathan, we didn't talk about this because obviously we haven't got the annexation. Do you require a dormant SSA
Yeah,
for stormwater basins?
Yeah, so for all new residential developments, the village establishes a special service area that it's dormant, but it's there. It could function as a backup if the HOA were not to meet its maintenance responsibilities. And that's something that
Would that be in the annexation agreement
it's
as
in
well?
our standard form of annexation agreement that the property owner or developer agrees that they will form that dormant special service area.
And that's pretty standard in the industry over the last 15, 20 years because there's so many storm basins out there.
Well, but again, we just kind of glossed over it, so.
No, and that's something, as we get further into the process, we're going to have to give some definitive thought. And obviously, as we get to the next step or two and we start bringing in a builder for this product here, it makes it a lot easier if we have one builder building both townhomes and single family to have a coordinated HOA program like that.
Did you say that you think there's not even a realistic possibility of doing some kind of a gated emergency drive in which it obviously would involve some kind of a bridge structure to basically tie the townhouse and the single family together, which
No,
then,
I-
in essence, that would create your 2 access points if you were able to
Right,
do
no,
that.
I didn't, it would be expensive.
Understood, but I
But-
mean,
And the question really is gonna go to the Public Works also.
Right.
It's expensive upfront to build, but once it's turned over to the village, it's expensive into perpetuity for the maintenance.
right.
There may be a desire, again, like the other discussion we had, we're gonna have to have multiple departments sit down and talk about it and to see what the best answer is. Doing a crossing in the Conspan Bridge, I've done a number of those over the years. Is it physically possible? Absolutely. Is it the best answer? Depends on which seat you have at the table.
Right.
So, I mean, we just gotta have that discussion.
I mean, you know, your idea about a stub from the townhouse to the west makes
Yeah.
some sense.
That solves that one easy. You know, here the question is,
Yeah.
is the distance from here to here before you have two ways in and out, is that sufficient enough?
Yeah.
Do you handle it with extra width in this landscape planning, where you got two ways in, two lanes out, 2 lanes in, and a 24-foot island? You know, probably gonna be a long time before any tree can cover that.
I mean, as far as the, you know, I think the land planning again makes sense. The townhouses over, and that 5-acre parcel that's there. I mean, I have to believe someday that that's all going to end up being a big park development. Although I know I think Wheatland Township owns the one park that's directly on 127th, and then park districts here. But you'd like to think that someday all these political organizations are going to work together and say, let's make this all one big open space, you know, versus some kind of a, you know, I can't imagine what that, 5 acres would be developed for, I guess is what I'm saying, you know. But
It's one of two things. It's tie the parks together, like you say,
Right.
or it becomes a logical addition to this townhome,
Right.
and you add,
Right.
you know, 30, 40 more townhomes into a program.
Mhm.
I mean, that other than that, it probably, you know, stays a farmette like it is until it's ripe to do that, because it's probably worth more as a home and a farmette today than it is a raw piece of developable property.
So Jonathan, this is just a concept plan approval. I'm assuming, you know, as they develop this plan, that's going to be back in front of us again. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in fact, the suggestion for the potential of a motion is merely a formality to succinctly convey to the board, so that even a motion is not required.
But obviously, the feedback that the applicant is looking for is, you know, the big picture items, the density, you know, access and all that. So I guess I just want to remind my fellow commissioners that, you know, when they come back for site plan approval, final site plan approval, and we're still having issues, we're still, you know, if we bring up density and we're not bringing up, now's the time to do this.
Sure.
So,
And that's what they're looking for, is
Yeah.
feedback from this overall concept. Obviously, this is all contingent on annexation. This would be something that would have to come back if we ever got to the specifics. But this is Mr. Heinen mentioned, this is your chance to kind of weigh in on this concept of the mixed-use townhomes and single-family here, and locations. Anybody else want to make
So
a
the
comment?
the land to the north and the east of this is owned by.
The Will County Forest Preserve.
Will County, okay.
I'm sorry, I should have covered that. Can you go back to the bigger plan? Sorry about that. The Will County Forest Preserve has purchased this property up until Old Book Road, and then they bought this parcel north of us. So we're on the north and east side of our parcel is fixed and is Forest Preserve. The gentleman that used to own this farm, Paul Clarkson, owns this piece, and I believe the Forest Preserve owns east of Book Road, once you get north of Clarkson's piece, right here. So
that entire line on the north.
right, that's
and
why
east
there's
is-
no stubs to
Okay.
the original concept plan that was approved 4 or 5 years ago by the village had stubs in both directions, and those were eliminated because you got Forest Preserve, and the Forest Preserve wanted to control everything through this regional bike path system.
So does the Forest Preserve own all the way up to 119th Street then? Or no?
they own all the way.
I believe they do.
They own all the way up to 111th. Yeah, their land stretches all the way up to
Yeah,
111th Street.
Wow.
They own a farm, you know, a farmstead up
Well,
there.
they're,
111th,
the big piece here is
Right.
up to 119th.
Right.
And then it's more of a strip up to
Yeah, it is, but
111th.
it does,
But
I think,
right,
keep
and
going.
that's why
Right.
this regional bike path, you know, they've wanted to be part of it because they envisioning that going from Naperville all the way to the end of the county to the south.
Well, I think it's a nice transition going from, for the west, the apartments, and then the community park to this, and I like how it flows, and as you go south, you get a different product again, so. And I think you've addressed a lot of the challenges, especially with the drainage and the water management, so. And hopefully, moving forward, if this does go forward, those access points will also be addressed.
Same comment as before. I'd like to see 2 access points, like we've been discussing, just for emergency vehicles. And second thing, just lot size. I think next to a forest preserve, I think if anywhere, we'd want to put a bigger lots, more that estate idea that's in the master plan to the west of the town, because heck, who wouldn't want to pay more to live next to a forest preserve? And I do also, though, like the fact that it's a transition that they've built in there with the higher density units, the duplexes or condos?
Those are townhomes.
Because you go from, like you said, apartments to condos to housing. So, that's a good idea.
I suppose here we should also reiterate the comment on development of 127 through there as we did on the last one. Obviously knowing some of the information. Oh, yeah, sure. So some of this property that we know what's going on to the north and the east may play into that. Obviously the density of the future streets coming off of that is going to be less, but I just think we should mention that here again too.
I agree, that's a valid point. Anyone else? So I know you don't require a motion, but I think we would entertain a motion if you want, if there's a consensus by many of the commissioners to support this overall concept.
I move we recommend approval of the concept plan for the proposed Brummel project north of 127th Street and west of Book Road.
Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded regarding support for this concept plan. May we get a vote by roll call, please?
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Segerbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Renzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Menace, Commissioner Heinen,
Yes.
Chairman Kiefer.
Yes. So this motion in support of the concept plan is approved. Again, please keep in touch with staff as this moves forward, and they will keep you updated on where it stands. All right. That concludes our new business. Do we have anything open for discussion? Anybody wants to bring up before the commission?
I think we're tired.
Everybody's tired. Just a quick reminder, the next village board meeting is scheduled for February 6th, 2017. Our next plan commission meeting is scheduled for February 7th, 2017. Please check the village website for any updates if that's to change or be moved. With that being said, at 9:37 we will adjourn.